My brother Ethan and I had a secret, forgotten lake deep in Pine Hollow Forest, 30 minutes hike from any road. We loved that isolated place, not because it was easy fishing, but because it was ours, a slice of wild no one else cared about. Birch trees leaned over the water like silent guards, their white trunks glowing faintly as dusk fell. We'd fished there since childhood. I caught my first bluegill there, and Ethan once slipped on a mossy rock, swearing he'd seen something move beneath the surface. We joked about it then, laughing it off. But that night, everything changed. It was a normal Friday. We packed crickets and worms and started hiking as the sun dipped low. By the time we reached the lake, the sky was a riot of orange and violet fading into gray. The scent of pine and wet earth filled the air. That lake always calmed me, no matter what else was going on. We settled on the flat rocks near the water's edge. Frogs croaked, leaves rustled, and the soft plop of our fishing lines broke the silence. It was perfect. Then ripples appeared, slow, deliberate, rolling from the far side of the lake. At first, I thought it was a bass, maybe a turtle breaking the surface. But the ripples didn't fade. They grew larger, wider, like something massive was swimming just below. I nudged Ethan and pointed. He squinted, voice shaky. Maybe a beaver. But as the sun disappeared completely, the ripples gave way to a shape. At first, it looked like a log, but then it straightened. Arms unfolded from its sides. A head emerged, shaped like a person's. Someone was standing in the middle of the lake. We froze. My heart pounded so loud I thought it would burst. Water dripped from the figure's dark form, sliding slowly down its limbs. "Holy shit," Ethan whispered. "Who the hell would be here? In water that drops to 6 feet, right at the edge, miles from any trail or cabin." We waited for Ithapasant to speak, to move, to swim toward shore, but it stood still, like a wet statue. Then it began to sway, not the shiver from cold, but a smooth back and forth, like it was dancing underwater. The hairs on my arms prickled. I whispered to leave, but Ethan laughed it off nervously. "They're too far to bother us. Maybe a diver." But the water was icy. I'd dipped my hand. Once it was like touching a block of ice. Who dives here at night? We tried to focus on fishing, but every sound made me jump. The wind, the water rippling, bugs buzzing. Then the figure vanished. No splash, no sound. The water calmed, like swallowing a secret. "Maybe they went under," Ethan said, pulling out his phone and turning on the flashlight. The beam cut through the dark, but vanished before reaching the other side. Then he did something strange. He started a timer. I stared at him. "What's that for?" "Timing how long they stay under." 1 minute. 2. The lake held its breath. By 3 minutes, I couldn't hide the dread tightening my gut. "Ethan, pack up." Now he didn't move then. Ripples again, but closer. A quarter way, halfway, 1/5 across the lake. "Ethan," I hissed, "we're leaving." This time, he didn't argue. We stood, ready to scramble. But before we could move, the lake broke 20 yards away. This time, not a shadow, not a shape. A woman rose. Her hair slicked brown, flat, like wet silk. Eyes shining like mirrors in the dim light. She wore an old-fashioned, dark green swimsuit, simple, timeless, like someone out of a forgotten photograph. And she smiled. "Hi." Her voice was soft, almost playful. "Are you fishing?" Neither of us answered. I felt frozen, breath hitching. Her tone was casual, come as if she'd just stepped out of a pool on a hot day. not risen from freezing depths like a ghost. "You boys should come in," she said, voice enticing. "The water feels nice." I shook my head, voice shaking. "No thanks." She cocked her head, eyes narrowing, afraid of getting wet. Ethan tried to laugh, brittle and silly, more like afraid of hypothermia. Her smile stretched too wide, two perfect teeth gleaming too white in the dark. "You'll get used to it." Then she glided closer, not swimming, not splashing, but sliding through the water without a ripple. I grabbed Ethan's arm. "We're leaving now." Her smile faded, her eyes darkened. Then she screamed. Not a human scream, high-pitched, shattering, a primal wail that echoed through the forest. We ran without looking back, stumbling over rocks and roots, branches snapping underfoot. Behind us, her voice twisted and faded. "Come back, come back." It turned into something unrecognizable, half human, half beast. Even on the trail, I could hear it echoing, haunting us like a nightmare. We didn't stop until we reached the truck. Ethan called the sheriff, voice trembling as he described what happened. They told us to stay put. We didn't. Weeks later, we returned with our dad. The lake was silent, too still, like it was waiting. Dad didn't believe us until he noticed footprints, small bare prints in the mud by the rocks. They didn't lead into the woods. They disappeared into the lake and never came back out. To this day, I don't know who or what that woman was. A drowned soul, something else. When I close my eyes at night, I still hear her voice, soft, cold, distant. "The water feels nice, ... I never thought a simple job in the wetlands would change my life forever. At 26, I was eager and naive when I took a seasonal position with a wildlife survey company in a tiny Louisiana town called Marobin. My task seemed straightforward: map parts of the local marshlands for an environmental study. Easy, right? Just endless stretches of reeds, mud, and stagnant green water shimmering in the early spring sun. But that's where it all began, right? In the quiet heart of that swamp. "Watch yourself out there," the locals warned me before I even started. In the diner, a grizzled old fisherman, skin leathery from years on the water, grinned and whispered, "The marsh keeps what it wants. Best not wander too deep." I laughed it off like any city kid would. Ghost stories, superstition, nothing to worry about. But the marsh was alive in ways I never imagined. And, looking back now, I realize that first warning wasn't just old town folklore, it was my only chance to turn back. Something unseen waits below the surface. On my third day, the sun barely above the treetops, I stepped deeper into a section of the marsh that my GPS refused to map. No matter where I stood, the signal dropped. At first, I blamed the usual swamp interference, but then something felt ... wrong. The air grew thick, heavy, like trying to breathe through a soaked cloth. Even the buzzing insects, normally so loud, were silent. The marsh itself seemed to be holding its breath. I snapped a few photos, the humidity misting my lens, and turned toward the truck. My boots sank into the mud with a strange, unnerving suction louder than usual. That's when I noticed them. Next to my prints were more footprints, bare, long, and pressed deeply into the mud. Too deep, too narrow to be human. The footprints led right out of the water and disappeared into the thick reeds. Old tracks, I told myself, heart racing. Maybe some fisherman or hunter. But the moment I walked away, a cold, itchy feeling crawled over my skin that I never shook that day. Back at the motel, I examined my pictures. One stood out the fog, and reeds masked a dark shape. At first, I told myself it was a tree stump, just a trick of the morning mist. But then I saw the shoulders, the head, two glowing white eyes staring right into the camera. I stared for minutes, my breath frozen. The eyes didn't blur. After zooming in, they stayed fixed, watching me. The marsh was not alone, and it had seen me. The next morning was eerily silent. No frogs, no dragonflies, only the sound of wind whispering through the tall grass. My curiosity overpowered my fear. I had to go back. When I reached the spot, fresh footprints were there again, wet and glistening with standing water. They were claw-like, too long to belong to any human. Suddenly, a faint splash echoed behind the reeds. The grass swayed as if something enormous pushed through. I grabbed my phone to record, and instantly the screen died, black, frozen. The reeds stopped moving, and the world held its breath. From the dense fog came a deep, wet croaky sound no frog could make, more guttural, like air forced painfully through waterlogged lungs. I ran. By the time I reached my truck, I was a breath away from collapse. I threw my gear inside and sped away, never glancing back. That night, the marsh haunted my dreams. I was knee-deep in cold water, wrapped in fog. A towering, skeletal figure loomed behind me, cloaked in dark moss and clay-colored skin. Its mouth stretched wide. To widen from it escaped that same terrible, croaking breath. I woke up drenched in sweat. Reality and nightmare began to blur. I tried to convince myself it was just stress. Too many ghost stories, too much caffeine. But then I noticed something chilling when I went to wash my face. My muddy boots were lined by the door, and pressed into the stained motel carpet were bare, wet footprints, long, clawed toes trailing toward the dark bathroom. The light was off, but I heard it. That slow, wet breathing. My limbs moved before my mind could die. Bolted out of that room, grabbed my keys, and didn't stop driving until I reached the highway. I told my boss I quit. No questions asked, no paycheck, just away. But curiosity, like the marsh itself, has a way of dragging you back. A week later, I got a message from Marcus Lee, the surveyor assigned to finish where I left off. "Hey," he wrote, "did you ever see something out here? Heard footsteps in the water last night." I started typing a warning, explaining everything I'd seen. Then my phone buzzed again. Marcus's next message said only 2 words, "Never mind." Found it, and then nothing. The silence that follows is louder than any scream. Heart pounding, I drove back to Morobin the next day. Marcus's truck sat unlocked near the trail, gear missing. I called the sheriff. A search began, but after 2 days, all they found was Marcus's equipment bag, half buried in mud, near that cursed no-signal zone. The GPS tracker inside was cracked open, its chip gone. Marcus vanished. The company pulled out for safety reasons, but I knew better. Something in that marsh took him. Late at night, the urge to revisit those photos gnaws at me, to prove I was wrong. I imagined the creature with glowing eyes, but then the memory hits the heavy, damp stench, clinging to my clothes like rot, like death buried too long underground. I never went back. Weeks later, a fisherman from the neighboring town posted a photo online. A creature floating near the reeds, caught in his lens. I clicked. My stomach dropped. It wasn't a creature. It was Marcus. Or what was left of him. Bloated, gray skin stretched over a mouth unnaturally wide and wet, just like in my dream. And in the photo's corner, half submerged in the misty water, two pale eyes gleamed faintly, watching whoever took the picture. The blistering heat of mid-July squeezed Crescent Valley, Oregon, like a vice grip. It wasn't just hot, it was that dry, restless kind of heat that makes your skin itch and your mind race. The kind that drags you toward anything wet or cold because your body is begging for relief. Everyone in town felt it, the itch to escape the suffocating stillness. My friends and I were no different. That summer, boredom had transformed into an obsession, searching for abandoned places, wandering forgotten trails swallowed by nature, chasing thrills in this quiet, sleepy valley where nothing ever happened. But that Friday night, the thirst for adventure pushed us further than ever before. We planned something new, something we'd heard whispers about, but never dared try. Fishing at the old Harrison Reservoir after dark. Everyone said it was off limits once the sun dipped below the horizon. They said there were strange happenings, shadows that shouldn't be there, things that don't belong. But for us, those warnings just added to the thrill. That should have been the first sign to turn back. It was me, Ethan, alongside Cole, my best friend since we were kids, and then Maya and Sierra, two girls new in town with that mix of curiosity and hesitation that made them perfect for what we were about to do. We packed our fishing rods, a couple of beers for courage, and hit the road around 9:30 p.m. Cole's battered Toyota grumbled as we left the main road behind. The reservoir was deep in the woods, over 20 minutes away, where the trees swallowed the faint glow of civilization. No streetlights, no cell reception, just dark, twisting roads that disappeared into shadow. Pulling up near the clearing, the first thing that hit me was silence. Not the peaceful kind you'd expect by a quiet lake. This was thick, unnatural silence. No chirping crickets, no croaking frogs, not even the buzz of insects. A silence so deep it filled your ears until you thought you might go deaf. Cole cracked open a beer, tossing one to me with a grin. Dude, chill. It's just a lake, not some haunted mansion. I wanted to believe him, but the air felt wrong, like it was holding its breath. We set up right by the old wooden dock, its weathered boards creaking softly under our feet. Above, the moon hung bright and full, its silver light spilling across the water like liquid glass. Maya settled on the edge, legs crossed, snapping photos of the glowing surface, while Sierra lit a small lantern, the warm orange glow fighting back the darkness around us. For a while, everything felt normal, quiet chatter, occasional laughter, and the gentle plop of bait hitting the water. Then, 20 minutes in, Cole's voice cut through the calm. Hey, do you guys see that? I turned to where he was staring, puzzled. At first, I thought he was messing with us. But then I saw it, a canoe, drifting on the far side of the reservoir. No oars moving it, no silhouette inside, just a slow, ghostly glide beneath the moonlight. The longer it floated there, the more unsettling it became. Maya tried zooming in with her phone camera, but the darkness swallowed the image. Maybe someone's camping nearby, she suggested, voice soft. Cole shrugged. Then why is the boat moving by itself? Nobody had an answer. We laughed nervously, trying to brush it off. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. Every rustle in the bushes, every ripple in the water made us jump. Then, Sierra whispered sharply, "Guys, look." She pointed to the opposite shore. A faint light flickered like a flashlight beam, sweeping slowly back and forth, searching the dark shoreline. It blinked out, then popped up closer, making my blood turn cold. "Someone's coming toward us," Maya murmured, eyes narrowing. Cole stood up slowly, squinting toward the moving glow. "Probably a ranger. Let's just pack up." But before we could move, a glint caught my eye near the dock, something metallic reflecting the moonlight. I stepped closer, heart hammering. Floating half submerged in the murky water was a shattered cell phone, flashlight still blinking weakly through cracked glass. None of us spoke for a moment. Then Cole fished it out with the net. Water dripped from the broken phone, light flickering as if desperate to keep going. The wallpaper was a picture: a man, a woman, and a little boy, all smiles, frozen in time. "Maybe it fell off that canoe," Maya whispered. "Yeah, but where's the guy?" Sierra asked the question, the words hanging heavy in the thick night air. A sudden splash shattered the silence, loud and too close. Everyone leaped. The sound came from right beside the dock, like something or someone had just stepped into the water. Cole swung his flashlight beam frantically, catching nothing but ripples spreading outward. "Who's there?" he called, voice shaky. No answer, just the lapping water. We stood frozen, waiting for more sounds, any signs of someone else. But the silence returned, deeper and heavier than before. My chest heaved, and I could feel my pulse in my throat. "Let's get the hell out of here," I said at last. Cole hesitated, shining his light under the dock. "Hold on," he whispered, voice tense. I knelt beside him, angling my phone flashlight into the darkness beneath the pier. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but inky black water and moon reflections. Then movement. A pale, ghostly hand broke the surface, curling around the dock's edge. Maya screamed, stumbling backward. The fingers vanished, gone in an instant, leaving only bubbles drifting to the surface. Panic erupted. We scrambled to pack everything, tossing rods and gear into the trunk like mad. Cole cursed under his breath and dropped the cracked phone onto the dirt. We jumped into the car, shaking and out of breath. As we pulled away, Sierra gasped, "He's there." Through the windshield, my eyes locked onto a shadowy figure across the reservoir, barely visible through the thicket. A man was standing, but perfectly still, soaked from head to toe. The car's headlights glinted off something dripping from his hands. He didn't move, didn't call out, just watched us leave, like a silent hunter waiting for his moment. Cole slammed the accelerator, gravel spraying behind us. No one spoke for what felt like an eternity, every ounce of bravery drained. Finally, Maya broke the silence. Cole nodded, pulling over where the signal returned. He dialed quickly, explaining everything, and the dispatcher told us to wait near the gas station. An hour later, officers arrived, flashlights piercing the darkness as they led us back to the reservoir. The dock looked untouched right where we left it, except the canoe was gone. They scanned the water with spotlights, but found nothing. No man, no phone, not even footprints on the far bank. It was as if we'd dreamed the whole thing. The sheriff told us the reservoir had been closed for years, multiple drownings, hikers who vanished, and rumors of illegal dumping that poisoned the water. "You kids got lucky," he said grimly. "People disappear out here, and most never come back." That night, sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that silhouette standing across the water and blinking, waiting, watching. 2 days later, the sheriff called with news that chilled me to the bone. In an unrelated case, the police dragged the reservoir and found a submerged canoe near the far side. Inside was a man in his 30s, skin pale and bloated, eyes wide open, face frozen in watery death. In his pocket was the same cracked phone we'd found floating. I still don't know what we saw. Was it a ghost? A warning? Something else the reservoir hides beneath its black surface? Every time I drive past the turnoff to Harrison Reservoir, that suffocating stillness presses on me, like the lake remembers. And locals say on full moon nights you can still see that canoe drifting slowly, side to side, empty but never alone, as if someone's searching endlessly for what they lost. If you ever find yourself standing by a forgotten lake after dark, and you see a canoe gliding all alone, don't stare too long, because what's out there might just be staring back at you. If this story sent a chill down your spine, hit subscribe. More real horror tales are coming, and you won't want to miss what's lurking in the shadows next.
Don't forget to subscribe because there are more stories like this, waiting to be told.